In Modern, Murktide is supposed to be the big boogeyman, the card that is unsolvable, the matchup that is unwinnable, but I, as the mill player, have a solution for you. Enjoy. Going into this first game, we are on the draw, so I don't know what my opponent's doing, but I get to play my land before them, so that feels pretty good. Unfortunately, they play a Ragavan, and I'm looking at double Spell Pierce without a single Fatal Push in sight. So I'm going to start getting hit. I think this spell is really a loss for this game. Just getting hit with Ragavan is way too much value. You lose your cards, they're up on mana, especially against a deck that's going to be playing 3 Spell Pierce main. It's not looking good. So I'm going to draw some cards, but I do see hope in the Ensnaring Bridge. Now, as I was mentioning in the beginning, it is one of the better cards in this matchup, but they do have a 2-1 out, which the Ensnaring Bridge isn't going to do too well of a job against. So I'm not going to play it just yet. If they play a problematic spell, I have the Spell Pierce, but next turn, I can play the Ensnaring Bridge and protect it with Spell Pierce against their Brazen Borrower, which I can get to closer. But I'm going to get hit for 5, start losing some of my cards. I will fetch to make sure I have the mana available. I will cycle with Fractured Sanity to keep their graveyard up. If they want to play the Murktide, they can. That essentially just means they are tapping out. That's really what I want them to do. They fall right into it. They did exile a Flooded Strand, which is great, but now I'm going to be able to slam the Ensnaring Bridge, hopefully against just one counter spell. Let's see. They have none, so I'm going to hold up the Spell Pierce, which is great. Now, in the main board, the deck doesn't really have many ways to deal with Ensnaring Bridge. Really, what I'm looking up against is the Otawara. They've already used the likely one of Brazen Borrower. Now, I'm going to get hit for 5 again. Again, I can stop the Murktide, but I really need these counter spells to start doing something for me. Now, they turn into that mill guy, and I'm the one that's going to start losing resources against Bridge. Unfortunately, the Spell Pierce is going to be a little dead, so I got to just start throwing out spells. That's the big thing. Now, I'm going to pass through, which was a bit of a mistake. I honestly probably should have just cast Tasha's and Spell Pierced it just to get rid of counter spells in my hand. But hey, they're going to start getting land triggers in against me. They're going to start dealing 5 more damage, which honestly I could have had a better kind of situation against here, but I do have the Otawara to at least bounce, which was the plan. But honestly, just getting rid of spells in my hand was probably the better call, but I did want to play out against the Lightning Bolt. Now I'm going to counter the Expressive Iteration, which is great. I do have an option against that, but again, as we kind of go through, they are going to tap through that, play the Expressive Iteration still. I'm going to bring that in tap, play the Rune Crab. I don't exactly want to fill their yard just yet, but in this case, I probably, again, should have just looked to counter that card with the Spell Pierce, because next turn I can then play the Rune Crab and just block with it. So this was probably the misplay here. I am at 4 life and I am going to be able to kind of keep myself up and alive, but again, the misplay came with probably just having to counter the Tasha's Hideous Laughter with the Spell Pierce. Here in this situation, I actually probably should have just drowned in the Loch, gone to counter it again, and that way I would have paid for my Spell Pierce, the drown would have resolved, and I would have been at 0 cards in hand. But hey, you live and you learn. The Ensnaring Bridge was out here to win for us, and we are aware that, again, even though we have the win in hand, we do have to play things out correctly. They managed to, well, eventually find the things they need. Although I am playing my Hedron Crab, I am milling them. That crucial Spell Pierce turn was very important for us, especially the deck that's going to be playing a lot of basics. We didn't need a field to ruin them. They play another Ledger Shredder. They have a lot of threats out there, and I'm not able to really double spell to get those Shredders above that key threshold against the Ensnaring Bridge. So I'm evidently going to be taking a lot of damage here. I'm going to be taking the 2. They're probably going to be playing some spells eventually to get that Shredder up, and well, they're going to play the 3rd Shredder, so even if I start drawing some removal spells, it's not doing much. So I draw the Flooded Strand. The game is over. And keep in mind, playing counter spells with Ensnaring Bridge, it's one of those age-old mistakes. Game 2, I know my game plan and I know what I want to do. I'm going to mull to 6, and I have a pretty good hand with double Archive Traps, so if they want to start playing out Murktides early, they're going to have to fetch, but unfortunately the Lightning Bolt dies. And the whole reason I ran it out was I had the turn 2 play in the Drown, so I didn't really want to hold it up to mill anything, especially because I didn't have at the time a good removal spell for the Murktide. Now I am able to deal with the first Ragavan, and unfortunately enough able to deal with the second. They ended up keeping a 1-land hand but drawing into another, and they are threat heavy. Fortunately enough, they are tapping out. I am able to play the Ensnaring Bridge, but at this point, they're just going to be attacking in for free, and I need to draw a Field of Ruin or they need to fetch. Now, taking Fractured Sanity was actually pretty huge on their part. I'm not going to cast any spells here. I'm going to try and get my value out of the Visions, even though I have the Ensnaring Bridge, which is a bit of a non-bow. That's perfectly fine. I'm only taking 3 damage a turn. they're going to be taking our spells from us. Obviously, they want to cast the visions here. It's not for 3, but it does trigger the surveil, and it's going to be putting some cards away. They have the kind of Murktide that they find, but I have the Ensnaring Bridge out, so why would they? Now, I find the land. I'm going to play the Ruin Crab. I have cast the visions. I do need to find something to activate with my archive traps. Now they're going to snap, bolt me. They're going to keep me honest in terms of the amount of life I'm at, but it's kind of weird what they did because they kind of created more types in their graveyard for the Dragon's Race Channeler. I thought maybe they would try and decrease some of that, but oh well. Now they're going to find the Spell Pierce. That's fine. I'm not casting any spells. I have the Drown in the Loch, which is going to be great, but I do ideally want to cast that on their turn. If they want to use mana to stop me, they're going to need to do it on their turn. And that's perfectly fine. They're going to Drown in the Loch. They used essentially that spell to kill their DRC, which can't attack, to increase their Flusterstorm counters. They're going to get me to tap out, and that's perfectly fine because, well, honestly, I'm going to follow their game plan. I'm going to play to them as long as it means that I'm not taking damage from the Ragavan. Now, they're going to play Relic of Progenitus, which is perfectly fine. I'm going to take 2, and that evidently scary moment of losing the Lightning Bolts is coming up. Now, I'm going to start casting Archive Traps off the rip. I kind of have to, and while they're resource down, I don't want to get hit by something like an Archmage's Charm, and if I am, then I want to do so so that they lose all their treasure tokens. Now they have a 2/1 that can attack. They don't have a attacking creature at all that can do anything. I have a Fatal Push, and this spells good vibes for us in general. They're gonna start tapping their Relic. That doesn't mean anything. Ensnaring Bridge is really going to be the MVP of this match right now. So as they go through their turn, I'm gonna destroy that creature. They're going to Relic, and obviously there was a situation there where they could have prop Relic and attack with the 1/1, so I just want to make sure the DRC is gone in that case. Now I'm going to cast an Archive Trap. That's perfectly fine. I'm just trying to get empty-handed even if they spell pierce it. Now I'm going to hold up the Watery Grave. There is an opportunity for them to actually Otawara one of my lands and them attacking through, but that's fine. They are trying to draw and find the piece that's going to answer the Ensnaring Bridge, and I'm going to hold that up for one more turn as I draw the Hedron Crab, and well, the patience has paid off. I have a blocker. I have a land coming in. I'm definitely not going to shock that in. So they're going to mill 3. The clock is increasing and things are looking up. Now they're going to cast another Snapcaster Mage with a lightning bolt. They're going to bolt me in the face. And well, they're going to keep me honest. They're going to keep me aggressive. They're going to keep me at 1 because if I draw a fetch land, they don't want me using that with the Hedron Crab, especially with that low life count. Now they have 3 cards, none of them are a bolt. I would have lost at this point, and I do find that fetch that I was talking about. Now I'm only going to get 1 mill trigger off of it, and that's looking good for me. And as long as I can keep those targets out of their hand, well, they're not going to find the Snapcaster Mage to really do anything about it. They're going to play Blood Moon. That's perfectly fine. I have my three basics out. I have the double snow-covered island. I have the snow-covered swamp. Unfortunately, I can't cast Fractured Sanities, but I can cast 1-mana Hedron Crabs. Now, they're going to keep relicking away stuff. Eventually, they're going to have to pop that relic to try and find something, which is perfectly fine. This means that they don't really have consistent sources of blue. They have to use their treasure tokens. I find a land and I pop through, and that's one of the benefits of having double crab out. Most of your draws are relevant. As I mentioned, that relic has to pop for them to find something. Now they have a bunch of triggers with their Murktide. It grows, but unfortunately that doesn't beat Ensnaring Bridge. So we go to game 3. The good old game 3 where your opponent is also just as nervous as you. Now they start things off with a Dragon's Race Channeler off the rip, but hey, I have a Fatal Push along with an Ashiok Dream Render and a Spell Pierce. There's so much interaction that I have here that's just good on multiple fronts. That's perfectly fine. I have the Hedron Crab out. They are going to bolt it away, and I prioritize not milling, but instead having Spell Pierce up in terms of options. I want to make sure that I can catch out an EI if I need to. So I play the Field of Ruin, I pass through. I want to protect the Ashiok. This is going to be a key card to really interact with this matchup. It's going to stop the DRCs, and especially with how much I haven't milled them, it's also going to stop their Dragon's Race Channeler. Now they're going to play the Expressive Iteration. They're going to play the DRC. They have the Polluted Delta up, and well, now I can play an Ashiok and really mitigate that damage. So I'm not going to Field of Ruin. I'm not going to give them an untapped source. I'm going to play the uncovered island here, play the Ashiok Dream Render. They're going to go to interact with me, and well, I have the Spell Pierce, but they got to keep me honest here, right? They got to keep me really consistent in terms of what I can do. So even if they have the removal spell, then I'm going to have that as well. I don't think they really thought about that. I think they might have had it in their hand. They accidentally 6 through, but that's fine. So they're going to start dealing that damage to me. They're going to deal some damage with the Unholy Heat to the Ashiok, and that's fine. It's at 2. I still got the value that I needed. Now, they're also at 5 minutes, so there's a bit of a clock on their side as well. They're going to Snapcaster Mage, they're going to Unholy Heat, and guess what, folks? I'm going to counter that. As much as I can, I will be countering that. Now, they do get the trigger off the Dragon's Race Chandler, so there is a little bit of filtering. There's a little bit that they can do. And I'm actually going to Flusterstorm this because I get a lot more value out of non-creature spell countering than I do out of the Flusterstorm, which can only do instant or sorceries. So Spell Pierce is just going to serve me better. Now, the DRC is going to come down. It's going to be doing a lot. They're going to be getting really, really aggressive here. I lose my Ashiok. They find an Ashiok on their side, which is actually really scary for me. But hey, your opponent's got to be playing with good cards too, right? If they're going to be playing with some trash 1/1s and 2/1s, they might as well take some good stuff off of us. Anyway, I Spell Pierce it away. They don't get that value. I am drawing lands, and it is not looking good. Now, I am limiting their kind of red sources, which is good because then this Ragavan is the only red thing that they're playing. They're not bolting us, they're not hitting us with anything else like an Expressive Iteration, but they are going to get the treasure tokens, which is unfortunate. I'm going to play the Ruin Crab. I'm going to get some fetching out there, and we're going to see what happens in this matchup. With them attacking, things are getting aggressive, but I have the 0/3 to do something for us, and at this point they're going to Unholy Heat the Crab. That's perfectly fine. It's gone. It served its purpose, and it's gone to the underworld. Now, draws are getting really weak here. We really need something on this turn, and guess what? We find the Holy Grail. We find the answer that we need, but our opponent has Spell Pierce. Can we pay for the Spell Pierce? Yes, we can. What does our opponent do from here? They have 1 blue mana left. Does the Spell Pierce resolve? No. They cast another Spell Pierce, and we have the 2 mana for it. Opponent, what are you doing here? Do you have no answer for the Ensnaring Bridge? Well, we might have just drawn the top deck of the century here. Ensnaring Bridge coming through in so many ways in game 2, even in game 1 if we didn't misplay, but in game 3 it is here to save us. It is here to say that I will never let you down. I play my land, I play my Hedron Crab, and we are on our way to a victory. Maybe. Let's see. We're going to draw through. Our opponent goes to their side. They can't attack with anything, and I'll tell you what, my Hedron Crab technically should not be attacking, although it can attack. Now, I'm going to find what I need here. I'm at 1 life. I fetch because it doesn't really make a difference. I might as well mill them, but I do have the Drown in the Loch here. And while their DRCs are super high, now I have the double removal spell. I do want to start removing certain threats here. They have the Abrade. I have the Drown in the Loch, and that's what Patience is about. Drown in the Loch is not a removal spell here. Drown in the Loch is a counter spell. So I have the mana and I have the resources I need to pay for the Flusterstorm, which is perfectly fine. I think they might have misread that and potentially had another spell they could have cast to make sure I can't pay it. So we'll consider it luck. We might consider it a little bit of Ensnaring Bridge, but hey, things have to work out for both of us in some way, and let's see whose plan was better. It was the Bridge players.